Welcome to episode 28 of Blackhawks Banter, brought to you by thehockeywriters.com. Thank you for being here. Be sure to follow and subscribe across all major social media and podcast platforms. Joining me is Gail Kauchuk, Greg Boysen, and Brooke LoFurno. And like the Blackhawks, we too are on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. But that doesn't mean our coverage has suffered, as we're all still producing great content that you can find right on our author pages and by following each of us individually too. You can find our Twitter handles right down here on each of our screens. Now, when you're talking about the Blackhawks, there's never a shortage of topics to cover anyway. So with that said, let's get right into this week's show. I want to talk a little bit, I want to start the show off by talking about the final stretch of the season. I mean, we all know there was very little to play for as far as the playoff picture went because both the Blackhawks and Dallas Stars were already out by that point. However, the Blackhawks still found a way to go 1-0-1 in their final week against the Stars. And, you know, it's always a plus to end with a sense of progress. So I want us all, you know, each of us to look back and reflect on the season as a whole. We know it started shaky. They saw an upward trend and then kind of came back down to earth. But I want to position it to each of you and find the area that you think they evolved the most throughout the year. Brooke, what do you think they did best from start to finish?
I'm going to say the power play, and I know that's kind of a streaky answer because they didn't do very well towards the end of the season there, but whatever they did was light years better even than last season. I know that, like I said, they kind of cooled off towards the end, but yeah, like I said, still a whole lot better than last year, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I agree. I was looking at the power play too, and they definitely cooled off, but still better overall. So that's a step in the right direction. Gail, power play or something else that you think improved for the Hawks last year?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I spent some time brainstorming it. And instead of coming up with like one specific aspect, I think what I'd like to stress about the whole season is just their youth, the youth getting acclimated. They had 9 rookies make their NHL debut, 9 players to score their first goal, 311 games played from the rookies. That's the most of any team. If you think back, Suter, Kurashev, Mitchell, it goes on and on. Lankinen as the goalie. And I think that it was just pretty invaluable for them to have this whole season to work out the kinks. And I think that that's really going to help them really get a nice head start next season.
Yeah, I think acclimated is a great word because that's we definitely saw that from start to finish. So definitely a good answer there. Greg, what did you like best about the Hawks and how did they progress last year for you?
It's a tough question because there were so many things that started off great and then tapered off as the season went on. But one thing that kind of did the exact opposite, started off slow, but then was really effective at the end of the year that I was happy to see was the penalty kill. There were some personnel changes made to that. We saw Kirby Dach on there, and adding Alex DeBrincat to the penalty kill was gave it a whole different option and gave it a whole different aggressiveness. Like there was a threat to score. I think that you could argue those last few games they had a better chance scoring on the PK than they did on the power play. So it improved over the course of the year. It got off to a slow start, but it got better as guys kind of got more comfortable. I think we're seeing an evolution of Alex DeBrincat as he tries to prove that, hey, I don't just score goals. I can play defense too. I can be a 200-foot player, and that's great to see.
Yeah. No, I agree. Speaking back to the power play, obviously we saw what they could do early on, and then the penalty kill ended off strong. And my answer is a little bit more all-encompassing. To me, it was really a matter of the cohesion as a group. I mean, they started off really shaky, as we all saw, but then they quickly sort of found a mold. And it was impressive to see, because like Gail said, the amount of rookies being infused into this lineup, for them to find that kind of comfortability with that veteran presence and find a way to make it work where they're battling for a playoff spot, it's hard to overlook that and not recognize that cohesion plays a big factor in their confidence and their ability to rely on each other. And even things like that improved power play and the fact that the penalty kill got better by the end of the year. So although it might be more of a broad answer on my end too, just their ability to get more, again, I'm going to use the word, I think it's a perfect word, acclimated with each other and with the surroundings, added that cohesion to this group that really bodes well for increased confidence and progress as this rebuild continues. Switching gears a little bit to their future as opposed to their past, let's talk about a recent acquisition. One of their trades with the Florida Panthers, they had a couple leading up to the trade deadline, involved Stan Bowman acquiring the signing rights to Henrik Borgstrom. For those that don't know what that means, he didn't become an active member of the team. They just basically owned his rights, which meant they still had to sign him to a contract for him to actually be a Blackhawk. Well, that has recently happened. So that's a good sign for Bowman and making good on this deal and seeing what Borgstrom can do for this system. With that said, when we look at Borgstrom's past, he only got into 59 games, I believe, with the 58 games with the Florida Panthers, and that's all dating all the way back to the 2017-18 season. So not a lot of sample size. And in that span, he only earned 19 points. So not a lot working out there for him in Florida, which makes sense why they wanted to let him go. However, this past season, he did a lot better, earning 21 points in 30 games in the Finnish Elite League. So what I want to ask each of you is if you think that Chicago fans should expect a little more of what they saw, what Panthers fans saw of Borgstrom in Florida, if we can expect to see a little more of that elevation that he's clearly experienced in Finland, or if we're going to see an even higher level of play from this player moving forward. Gail?
Well, let's face it, nobody really knows what kind of player that Borgstrom's eventually going to become. We just have to kind of see it evolve. He looked great in Denver, and then he struggled a little bit in the NHL, and then of course he did good in Finland. And sometimes it just takes players some time to find their way. The good news is that the Blackhawks has really good European scouts, and so I think we're in good hands if they feel good about him. He went to high school with Kevin Lankinen, so we got that. But seriously, say what you will about Jeremy Colleton. He might not have the NHL experience as a new coach, and he might not have the defensive system for this team, but he is pretty good at developing the young players. And so hopefully Borgstrom will be another one that he will take under his wing, and we'll see good things.
Yeah, definitely a lot of positives leading into this. So we'll see what he can do when he hits the ice. Greg, are you expecting more of the same that he showed in Florida, or an elevation?
I would hope for an elevation. I think we all need to have tempered expectations, like we did when, we first heard about Dominic Kubalik coming over from Europe. Okay, sure, there's a guy. And then it worked out well. Same with Suter. As Gail alluded to, he spent a year in Finland, and if the European scouting staff is high on a guy, that's good enough for me to be like, okay, this could be a player, because they've had a pretty darn good track record the last few years. So we'll see what happens. I think it's all going to turn. There's a lot of factors that are going to go into what he could be next season. It all depends on the health down the middle. If, and it's a big if, you have a Jonathan Taves up top and you have a healthy Kirby Dach as your 1-2, then he can slot in the bottom six and take more time getting adjusted to the NHL game again. And it's all going to depend on where he slots in and who he plays with, finding chemistry. It's probably going to take a while to find exactly that spot, but hopefully the Hawks have the depth down the middle at the start of next year where you can take some time, because if he has to start in a top 6 role, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, fair enough. Circumstance should definitely play a factor. Brooke, are you trusting the European scouting staff of the Blackhawks team?
Yeah, I am. I mean, sometimes when you look at it, it is hard to compare European stats to NHL stats because it is a completely different league. But something about this makes me feel really hopeful because he had such a good year overseas. And to me, that builds confidence. And when you have confidence, you usually play really well. So I'm hoping that at least the confidence carries over. And, when you have that, you can do anything. So I do expect an upgrade. Not expect, I should say, but I would hope that there is an upgrade there in his play for him.
Yeah, fair points all around. I mean, I'll take it a step further and say I do expect an upgrade. When you dig into this player and you look at his past, this is a Hobey Baker finalist of one of the best college players out there. And hockey's a big sport in college down in the States, and we all know that. And he was one of the best in the year that he could have won that award. So that says a lot for the player. Him being a former first-round pick obviously says a lot in itself too. The fact that he couldn't find a fit in Florida, I don't know if that was, just bad timing, bad circumstance, bad fit. We know that. We know some players just don't do well in a certain system. And I personally think this was one of them. I think he's entering a perfect scenario in Chicago with this rebuild right on track. If they can find a way to infuse him into the lineup, I don't care where that is. I expect him to be productive. To Greg's point, obviously that production might not be as high if he's in a bottom 6 role, but at the same time, I think he'd find a fit and like Brooke said, find some confidence and at least get his wheels under him to have a bigger impact than he's been able to at the NHL level. So I definitely expect an elevation. I don't know how quickly we'll see it, depending on where he slots in, as has been noted, but I have pretty high hopes for what we can see out of Borgstrom. And speaking of what to expect when new talent joins the team, their former first-round pick, the Chicago Blackhawks, from the 2020 draft, Lukas Reichel, has just added a German Elite League championship to his resume. The forward accumulated 5 points in 9 playoff contests, in addition to the 27 he earned throughout 38 regular season games, all as an 18-year-old. Coincidentally, today is his birthday, so happy birthday, Lucas. What I want to do is put it all to each of you and wonder, when can we expect to see Lucas come over and what will he do when he does get over here? Greg?
I wouldn't be in any rush at this point. I'm sure we'll see him here this fall for training camp. And if there's going to be any kind of prospect camp in the summer or maybe a prospect tournament, that I know just based on the way Mark Bernard, the Ice Hogs general manager, talked today, that there could be some sort of prospect tournament in the fall. So I'm sure we'll see him over here at least in September. And then who knows what happens. I think at 19, you can't really rush him over. There's really no need to at this point. If you can get him back in Germany, and those are really good numbers. I know a lot of times people look at the European League, especially for younger players, and go, well, he only had 16 points in 30 games. But you got to understand that it's really hard for teenagers to get meaningful minutes in any of those leagues, be it Germany, Sweden, Russia. So anytime you can get a kid that contributes big, and those are really good numbers. So I think they've got a really good player on their hands, but there is absolutely no reason to try and rush him along. So I would not plan on seeing him play in North America next season, but stranger things have happened. He could come in training camp and just look, he could give them all the reasons not to send him back. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, it will be cool to see if he does come over for training camp or any kind of prospect tournament that he agree. Brooke, when do you expect to see Reichel over here in a Blackhawks uniform?
I don't know. Something tells me, because when Stan gets really high on players, it usually means they're coming over next season. That's kind of what happened with Ian Mitchell when he was talking really highly of him, and then all of a sudden he became a Blackhawk the next season. So I'm kind of with Greg about, I don't know if that's the right move to rush him over here, but I do think he will probably make the team next year, because he is that our first pick, in the draft, and they have really high hopes for him. So like I said, I wouldn't rush him either. I don't think there's any need to, but I do think he will be there. But what I expect from that is usually another scoring punch, because we desperately need it, and that's what I'm expecting from him.
Yeah, fair. Well said. Gail, are we rushing him over, or is he staying in Europe for another year or two?
Well, I'm actually with Brooke here. Everything that I've read and heard, it sounds like the organization feels like, he's going to be in a Blackhawks sweater next year. Eisenbären Berlin, I might not be saying that right, but his team in Germany, it was a great place. I've read things that he was a great place for him to grow and thrive, and they've been showing him, putting him out in all situations. I think that he's pretty much to a point where he's done everything he can and is ready to move to the next step. I did just read, I think it was yesterday, an Athletic article that said that, they're expecting him here next year. Not sure if he'll be AHL or NHL, but with the way things were this year and with getting the youngsters going, I would expect that even if he's in the AHL, we're going to see him with some games also with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I'm going to back on that very point. I think it speaks to their current rebuild and the strategy that they had this year, which sort of lends me to believe that he will be in the Blackhawks organization next year. And I agree, Gail, whether that means he sticks with the Ice Hogs or does make it up to the Blackhawks, I'm not sold on that yet. Maybe to Greg's point, he comes over and how he does in that prospect tournament or in training camp dictates that, but something tells me that he will be over here in North America next season in some capacity. Whether there's logic behind that or not, it just seems to follow suit with exactly what they did this year. I don't see why they'd stop that momentum as far as infusing youth, get them into the lineup, see what they can do. And like Brooke said, this kid can clearly score. Well, they need more of that. They're going to always need more of that. So let's get him in and let's get more of that. Just a friendly reminder to be sure to subscribe and follow so you never miss an episode of Blackhawks Banter. Thank you again for tuning in, and we hope you're enjoying the show. It's time to give their most tenured netminder the focus he wasn't granted all year. We know that Kevin Lankinen stole the spotlight, and rightfully so. We know that Malcolm Subban was there and proved to be a pretty solid backup. But Colin Delia started the year off pretty shaky. We spoke about that on the show. Everyone knows that. That's not a surprise. He was sent down to Rockford for a conditioning stint. That didn't go well to start off either, but he bounced back and he improved his play while he was down there. Unfortunately, even though he was recalled by the Blackhawks, it still took them nearly 4 months to get him back into a game, which, I've said on the show, I've said in articles, and I've said all along that never made sense to me. So what I want to know is, the reality is that he still finished the season off getting into 4 of their 5 games. He ended the season with a 1-1-1 record and a 9.24 save percentage, much better than his beginning of the season stats. So what I want to know is, did Delia's earlier performances scare you off and make you think that really is all we can expect from him, or did his later performances give you some added hope and perspective on what's to come of his career? Brooke?
I think his performance to me aligned with his capabilities. I think as spectators, we've seen him before in the NHL. He has NHL experience, and I think we've seen that he's capable of stealing games and making really big saves. I understand he's not a number 1 goalie. I understand he's not going to all of a sudden come in and save this team, but I do know, or we can see that he's capable of doing those things as a really solid backup, I think, in my opinion. So I think that mostly just reiterated what most people knew, and that's what makes it so frustrating that he was held out for so long.
Yeah, definitely nice to see the bounce back. Gail, are you higher on Delia or still thinking he's more like the early season?
The thing that really impressed me about Delia is that, he did sit out for so long, and it's really, really tough as a goaltender. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a goaltending expert, because I think that's the hardest position, to really understand, except for you, of course, Shaun, but
We're weird. It's hard to understand weirdos. I get that.
But I do know that with any player, and especially the goaltending position, you have to have your timing, and when you don't, it's easier to have your timing and to really be on when you play, and when you don't play, and that's really hard. And the thing that impressed me is that he came back and he really, really worked hard, and he had a really good showing at the end of the season. And that's a really hard thing to do. You would expect some rust, and he overcame that. So I think that he probably has improved, and it's great that he did get that shot to kind of go out on a high note. And I would hope that he gets some fair competition in training camp next season.
Yeah, well put. It'd be nice if he gets a little bit of a better shake, with a bigger sample size for sure. Greg, feeling better about Delia or about the same?
Yeah, I'm about the same as I was. I mean, he's a good goaltender. Is he an NHL number 1? I don't think so. I mean, could he be one day? Maybe. He's not a franchise goaltender, even though there are those in the Twitters that will say that they think we're stashing Martin Brodeur in the, it's a conspiracy. But it was a rough season for him, and a lot of young players, a lot of young goaltenders. He got screwed over, basically, and it wasn't his fault. And I'm not saying it was maliciously done by it. Just he got his starts early, and he was bad. Let's all say it. He was bad those first 2 games, and that might be kind of nice how he played those games. And then Lankinen got red hot. Subban was playing well, and the Blackhawks were in the middle of a playoff race. There wasn't really the opportunity to put a bad goaltender back in while you're fighting for a playoff spot and you got 2 hot goaltenders. So, he got the raw end of the deal. Playing better those first 2 games might have changed the whole season for him. Yes, you deserve more than 2 games, but it is what it is. He got to play in Rockford a little bit, started off slow, got better as he got more time. What he did at the end of the year was good to see and impressive. We got to speak to him one time after one of his starts in Rockford, and he's very candid, always has been. And he spoke very openly about the whole thing, and it was his idea. He pressured his agent to pressure the Blackhawks to put him on that rehabilitation stint to get some action in and play. You could tell he was a frustrated guy, but he's not alone. There's many guys across the league, and goaltenders especially, that lost a season of development. In a normal year, he would have been in Rockford. If he didn't perform well in the beginning of the year, he could have been the number 1 guy in Rockford, playing, developing. It is what it is, and hopefully he gets a fresh start next season, and we'll see. And I expect a Lincoln and Delia tandem next season going forward. So hopefully that pans out.
Yeah, I mean, well put. Regardless where he ends up, I hope he gets, like I said, a fair shake and does at least get a full season's worth of an opportunity. Like Greg, like you said, it was a weird year. And, we have to attribute the fact that Delia obviously had some pretty rough games to start the year. Clearly, it's an understatement to say that. But the reality is, I think a lot of people are failing to focus on is that the team failed around him as well. Through those painful losses, the entire team suffered that, not just Delia. So that's what was rough for me. Never mind having a bias towards goalies, but just seeing him sort of thrown around and his name thrown around that he was bad or he played poorly or it was his fault or he doesn't deserve to be back. The whole team failed. That's the reality of it. The whole team sucked at the beginning of the year and then they got better. So when they started to get better, that's where I wanted to see him infused back into even couldn't even if it wasn't every other game, just finding a way. Once Lankinen and Subban's numbers started to dip a little bit, throw Delia back in and see what he can do. I just think it took a little too long. And the reality is I almost felt like he was set up for failure by being put into so many games to end the year. It just felt, for me, I felt nervous for him because it was great to see him back in the net, but I just thought, you're setting this guy up to get back in there and just get trampled on all over again. But the fact that he held his own and had those stellar numbers was impressive. So I don't necessarily expect that kind of a showing from Delia moving forward. I think he had some performances that aren't necessarily sustainable, but the fact that he showed his upper level of play was promising. So to me, I don't expect him to play as poorly as he did to start the year because I expect better systems around him. But I also don't expect him to sustain that high level that he ended the year with. I think he'll be somewhere in the middle with a tendency to be on the better end of that. So like we've all said, like we all agreed, let's just hope he gets a fair shake next year and we can truly see what he's capable of in whatever kind of role he's given, whether it's with the Blackhawks organization or otherwise. Let's get to a more current topic for a second and talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously, the Blackhawks are not in them this year, and that's a shame, but none of us really expected that preseason, even though some of us might have throughout. A couple weeks ago on this very show, Greg asked all of us who we are going to be cheering for from here on out with Chicago out. Whose bandwagon are we going to be jumping on? So I figured I'd flip it around a little bit, and instead of talking about who we're cheering for, I want to know who you're cheering against. So of the 16 teams that are now battling for the ultimate bragging rights, I want to know who is the team that you least want to see hoisting the 2021 Stanley Cup. Gail.
Duh. The Predators. Although, okay, the Predators don't like the Predators. They're rivals and all that. Although it's unlikely that they're going to get past the first round with Carolina Hurricanes. So I'm also going to throw out there that I'm not a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And can we just wash out this whole Bruins Capitals? Like, neither one of them. Forget it. Although the funny thing is that, when you're watching these series and you don't like either team or you don't really know who to root for, don't you always kind of end up figuring out who to root for, and all of a sudden somebody will score a goal and you'll be like happy and then be like, I guess I'm rooting for them. So the jury's still out. We'll see who I decide to pick for that series.
Fair enough. Greg, who do you hate most of who's left?
Oh man, this was a tough one because there's a lot of teams I wish would just all lose early. I don't like the Bruins. I never liked the Bruins. I still hold a grudge from the Penguins from 1992. They broke my 13-year-old heart so they can screw for the rest, done. Sorry, Shaun, don't like the Maple Leafs. I don't like the Habs. I don't like a lot of these teams, but this is still a very easy question. I will never, ever, in any situation, ever cheer for the St. Louis Blues. I hope they lose 26-0 in all 4 games. They are a bum team. They are a bum organization from a bum city. I hate the Blues. Always will, always have. Just been something that's been instilled in me. If you need further evidence on why you should hate the St. Louis Blues, Google the St. Patrick's Day Massacre, and then that's where it started for me. So not the biggest Colorado Avalanche fan in the world either, but I hope they dominate and knock those stinking Blues right out of the lineup.
Yeah, to back up your stance on the Blues, I didn't even want them in the playoffs. Something about Jordan Binnington, as much as, again, I'm a goalie fan for the most part, I do not like that kid. Yeah. Brooke, I think we all know where you're headed with this answer, but who do you not want to be winning this year's Stanley Cup?
I think I might surprise you guys. There's actually not a lot of teams I really dislike except for like the teams in our division, like the Blues and the Predators and stuff, but I don't think those are like true Stanley Cup threats. So my top pick, I think, is the Washington Capitals. I have never liked them. I don't really know why. I just never did. I've never rooted for them. And I said before the start of the season that they were my pick that I think is going to win the Stanley Cup. So I hope that doesn't come true because I genuinely just don't like them. And it's really nothing again. I just don't really care for them. So that's my pick.
Fair enough. I mean, I gotta say, group, good team effort here. I appreciate the variety of the hatred that we can spew across the league. I didn't expect it to be that widespread, so that's nice to hear. And I'll change it up a little bit too and go with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think I've been a fan of theirs for years now. Not to the same degree, obviously, that I support the Leafs or the Hawks, but a fan in the sense that they worked hard, they put a good system together, they're a good team, they're skilled, they're fast, they play a fun game, and it was nice to see them finally win. But, we just got to call it out and say that what they're doing this year is just shady. The finding the way to circumvent the cap the way they have, Kucherov's back in, doing what he's been known to do. This team should be well over the salary cap, and somehow they're finding a way to make it work, and the league is just turning a blind eye. I don't think that should be rewarded. I don't want to see Tampa Bay win the cup. If they're out first round, I'm happy with that too. So they just don't deserve it. In any other case, I might say they did, but this Kucherov move just bugs me. So whether it's legal or not, I don't like it.
I don't either.
And it's pretty easy to root for Coach Q on the other, so
Fair enough. Makes my case even easier there. So good.
Yeah, then that was a fun game yesterday.
That was
it was awesome.
Some good old fashioned hatred on the ice right there. That one's gonna must see TV right there.
And the only one that didn't go to overtime. I mean, really, all these games have been great so far.
Yeah, Tampa ruined that for us. They didn't follow the script, so I hope they lose now too.
Yeah, and Kucherov looked far from rusty. Shocking to the rest of us, huh?
Oh, I know. I was like, really?
Right.
Well, never mind the rest of the league. Let's move on to who we think deserves some attention from the Blackhawks side of things. We obviously know it's unlikely that any of them are going to be named in the 2021 NHL awards ceremonies, rightfully so, but that doesn't mean there weren't performances that we should recognize and shine a spotlight on. So I tasked each of us in our preview post to fill out our ballots for some awards that are team specific. I'm going to give each of us the floor here for one respective award so we can sell each other and our audience on why our selection was who they were and why that's the right pick for that honor. We're going to start things off with the most improved Blackhawk. Greg, who wins this one and why?
I am going with Adam Boqvist on this one. I think we saw tremendous progression. There were a lot of, I think the expectations were kind of low after last year. He struggled a bit. He was really good in Rockford, and then he struggled with the NHL speed for the most part and his positioning. We saw a little bit of that in the beginning of the season, and then he had his little COVID vacation and came back and looked really like a completely different player until he got the puck in the face again. We still need him to get a little bigger, a little stronger, but you're seeing those instincts and you're seeing the dynamics that why he was drafted as high as he was starting to come along. And he's still so young, but as I said, the beginning before season even started, his progression is one of the biggest keys of the season, and we saw it, and that's encouraging. So from game one to the final game of the year, I don't think anybody improved his game more than Boqvist.
Yeah, hard to argue. His confidence was definitely soaring near the latter end of the season. That was definitely fun to watch and shows us that there's a lot more in the tank for that kid. So that'll be fun to follow.
It's a shame that he broke his wrist and didn't get to finish out those last 4 or 5 games, and they're saying that's not going to interfere too much with his off-season training. So hopefully it won't, and he can come back ready to go next year.
Yeah, he can work on those legs while the wrist is broken. He can use it.
Yeah.
Brooke, in your mind, who earned the title as most reliable Blackhawk?
Well, poor Boqvist. That guy couldn't catch a break. I could feel kind of bad for him, but I know there was a lot of variety that we could have chosen for this question, but my pick was Vinny Hinostroza. No, that's not a Steve Harvey moment. I'm not saying the wrong name, I promise, but I don't know. It's just, he had this season, I think, 4 goals in 17 games. And then when he was with Arizona, he had 5 in 68 games. So that's a pretty big improvement for him, I think. So, and I think he surprised most of us. I don't think we expected him to be as impactful as he was towards the end of the season, which was kind of fun to see. So I think I'm choosing him for most improved.
Yeah, solid turnaround for Hinostroza and the rest of his season. I mean, we hope that'll translate into good things to come in the years to come. But needless to say, he obviously loved being back here, and that was fun for us to witness. With a plethora of rookies to choose from, who stood out as being the best this past year and why, Gail?
Okay, best Blackhawks rookie. It's funny because on our post, let's see, Greg and Brooke picked Brandon Hagel as their best rookie, and Shaun, of course, went with Kevin Lankinen.
Shocking.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. Shocking. It's funny because if you asked who my favorite rookie was, I would say Brandon Hagel, and if you said pick the best rookie and don't forget about the goaltender, I probably would say, oh yeah, Kevin Lankinen. But my pick for the best Blackhawks rookie is going to be Pius Suter. The reason I say that is because, he was fourth on the team in goals with 14 and in points with 27, fourth on the team for both of those. And, Hagel had 15 assists, whereas he had 13. So he was right up there. We talked about this last week. We talked about Suter, the fact that he centered the top line for most of the season, probably got thrown in before he was ready to do that, but yet he still thrived and did well there. He can play on the wing, so he's versatile. So he would be my pick for the best rookie.
Yeah, solid case made for sure. I mean, I think we're fortunate that we had so many rookies to even think about and choose from. So that's a win all around, but you can't go wrong with Suter. Last but not least, let me explain my pick for most valuable Blackhawk, Alex DeBrincat. This guy elevated to a new tier this season. He led the team in goals with 31. He was second in points only to Kane with 56. One stat that was super impressive to me, and it might go under the radar a little bit, but he had 7 game winners. Kane had 3. So we all think Kane is a big game player, and clearly he is. I'm not disputing that. He's my favorite Blackhawk. But the reality is Alex DeBrincat, 23-year-old Alex DeBrincat, had 7 game winners. That's outrageous. So that in itself says enough about how clutch this guy was all year. Then you want to talk about the fact that he's a smaller statured kid, but second in forwards and hits with 70, throwing his body around, doing everything he needs to in every part of the game, playing in all positions. Power play most of the year, as Greg said, gets into the penalty kill near the end. He's produced across all scenarios. He was relied upon every single game and showed up when he was there to do what he was there to do. He always looked dangerous when he was on the ice. So when you look at even comparing to Patrick Kane, I'm not suggesting to the viewers, anyone who's going to come at me, no, Alex DeBrincat is not Patrick Kane yet. But the reality is when you look at this past season sample, there was times, whether it was due to injury or whatever it might have been due to, that Patrick Kane just didn't look like the Patrick Kane that we know and love, where he did in other parts of the season where he was obviously right back to being Kane. DeBrincat was steady all year. He was dangerous in every scenario. So to me, this was a very easy pick just from watching the games, but then you look at these stats and realize he rose above and he elevated to a tier that I don't think anyone could have anticipated. And, the future's bright for this kid, and he was already the MVP in my books.
Good pick.
Yep, I agree with the Kaner sentiment. I mean, I know he had some love in this category in the preview post, but he kind of tapered there. We discussed it a couple weeks ago. I think he had 2 goals in the last 22 games a year. That's not MVP material for me, but hard to argue with the DeBrincat there. He had a great season, and hopefully it's just another rung in the ladder.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, just imagine what else is ahead for this guy with a better team around him, a better supporting cast who builds on that confidence and cohesion. I can only imagine. I mean, I hope this is just one tick in elevation for what else he's going to do.
Short people got plenty of reason to live, don't they? Anybody, Greg? I know you know that song. The other two might not.
I know that one. We're dating ourselves, Gail. Stop it.
Well, before any of us embarrass ourselves any further, I will say that does it for another episode of Blackhawks Banter. We appreciate you tuning in and remind you to please subscribe, follow, and engage with each of us across social media on all of your favorite platforms. Thank you, Gail, Greg, and Brooke for joining me, and we will see you all next week for episode 29. Take care, folks.